The Cobalt Migration, by Julian Phillips with Tom Luong. Chapter 3, June 23, 2018. All rights reserved. Sid Bixie Mimin. Chapter 3. There is not truth where you are, Mellu Tanaka. No truth. There is no truth where we are. Where we are. Where we are. By the time the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were toasted down to ashes until only poisoned bread remained, the new Mars resident Barissa's fourth or fifth generation removed great-great-grandmother, Mellu Tanaka, then young herself of course Indiana 1945, might have thought it fortunate to have been abducted by aliens in spaceships that particular summer. World War II could only rage and rage. Forces far greater than Mellu, or any person, left many dark impressions and ideas. But Malu was not on Earth, when the atomic bombs unleashed hellfire on these Asian Pacific treasures of human endeavor, these two great cities. Where you are there is no truth. Where truth is not, where no truth is, free from its tyranny, free from all truth, any truth, small truth, epic truth, hilarious and impossible truths, highly unlikely truths, true truths and untrue truths. There is no truth where you are, Mellu Tanaka of Tokinori, Japan. Then where am I? Is this hell? This is hard for me to accept, Tanaka was thinking. Where are my father and my mother? Where is the old lady with the broom arguing with the young soldier about the rent money? Where are the birds? Where are the trees? Alien abductions are a myth, and not real, for most people. Kidnapping, holding a person against their will, or for ransom of any kind, unwelcome use of force or coercion, or secretive ways, or crime, and similar behaviors, are unlawful, and onerous, in any society that is not insane or barbaric. In any ancient land, for instance, a tribesman is accountable to his kin, to turn him over to a foreign power outside the tribe, for whatever reason, and the same will be judged and under law, in most ancient groups. This may be so, or not specific to the past, but is largely ageless. For this reason, alien abductions are a crime in planetary realms near inhabited Earth, also called Urantia. The war in Europe, America, and Japan, and other powers in year 1945, proudly proclaimed the World War for the regional diversity, worldwide, of its poison spell, could but rage and rage and rage and rage. But for any human being, or even any animal, the legal law, and animal law, universally exclude any sort of violent transportation of souls. Malu was happy she had avoided incineration, at or near Hiroshima, as the poison atomic heat ended 130,000 lives. During her time with the visitors, thought to be Rillian, or the so-called Nephilim, Malu had no idea the bombs were falling. And prior to that, as a mostly innocent young Japanese woman, her education did not then include much at all about nuclear weapons. So for this to have happened, also wounded her psyche, her mind or soul, related to her home. But any kind of abduction is immoral and fearful, and Malu may have reconsidered which fate was the worser. The Nephilim are a grossly deceptive species to mankind, interstellar travelers, of the most advanced science, and rumored to be of the Cygnus star system. Not really. Just kidding. Malu told herself. Not really. Just kidding. How could there ever be no truth to anything? Or have I achieved the ananda bliss state of nothingness? No one could really know, which did not in itself make it untrue. But untrue perhaps enough, in its misunderstanding. Worlds in the Cygnus star system are thought to host between 3 and 10 life-sustaining planets, but at such galactic distances, that they would forever remain unknown on Earth. Except perhaps in the case of alien abductions, like what happened to Malu. And these are by every known account or record, verified or not, almost always horrific, unpleasant and heartless experiences. Perhaps most appalling of all, are accounts by women of the Earth, claiming that during the abduction experiences, they were forcibly impregnated, or tampered with and fertilized, of the ovum and uterus or womb. If only a hysterical madness or fantasy, or if not, the rumored adventure became a pattern, and seemed vivid enough that later study was called for. And thus the infatuation of UFO conspiracy. 1945, summertime in Japan. At the raw and bloody ending scenario of the horror of war against the Nazi, genocide, and military control of foreign lands, taken only by violence. And this was a trait of the so-called Nephilim, though it was not a belief that was true, only a mystery and legend, nothing more. By that time, Earth's sustaining environment was itself of some legendary interest to not only aliens, but gods, angel beings, and who knows what. And Malu was then only a simple young woman of Japan. If truth was nearby, she could never have found it on her own. In theory, her body was located in some sort of orbital spacecraft, possibly a light ship, or one of the dreaded stone-like tomb ships, which transported life great distances, encased in a solid substance, and then revived at the destination, even at galactic distances. The practice could be compared to the theft of some frozen food, and is also outlawed by powers of the grand universe, as inherently immoral. No youthful optimism or favorite tune or happy melody could reach where Malu was, and what she seemed to inhabit, then. There is no truth here. And that is the truth. Malu of course knew much about the war, and much of what was happening to cause so much sadness and sorrow in so many lives at that time, for that war. She knew about the bomb, she knew about the slaughterhouses, she knew about the prison camps, she knew about some of the battles. The atomic bomb that fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a surprise attack, after all. Malu's father, the electronics merchant and radio technician, was not shy to share his feelings with his beloved daughter. Japan has no business in this war with the United States, he said. You must not repeat what I am telling you. But it is my own opinion nevertheless. Yes, further Malu answered. Any person from Japan, who would visit America, is placed in prison camps, in California, today, and for the time of this battle. And in Arizona or other places. I have never been there, to these places, but it is true. So we must not go there, although it is very good for my business, to sell to markets. And the Jewish people in Europe, Malu added somewhat meekly, somewhat fearful. And anyone who gets in their way, Malu. Anyone. It is not because they have some great purpose. It is only more simple for the Nazis to organize their brutality by various groups. It has nothing to do with the targets of their hatred. It has no cause. Thank you for helping me understand, Father, she said. I am going now. You are dismissed, he said. About 2 weeks ahead of the first nuclear weapons attack in history, Malu was sleeping. Early the night. It was summertime. The young woman was an object of interest, then, to mind so very foreign to the human heart, and the location of hearts, as to resemble only a bad dream. Though vivid and seeming real, only a bad dream. As UFO reports claim, the alien and also the Nephilim could only arrive near Urantia via impossible travel distances and time-space needs. If true, if not, she was only dreaming anyway. Early the night. Stars and indigo. Nice outfit, Mother God divine deity so holy, as a garment you do but wear, to hold our hearts more gently. Trees and small hills and mountains, small creeks, rivers, flowing life, people, children, sleeping like a resting pot, left to stew with their ingredients, fish, vegetables, rice and grains, flavors, water, fire and heat and steam, and the pot stewed and boiled and steamed and puffed, and the heat was relieved, and the pot left aside, untended, growing cold. Toki Noro, Toki Noro, Toki Noro. bird tree, bird tree, bird tree. It is ever darkness in the depths of space, and this is relatively true. But whatever dark minds had an interest in Mellu, of the Japanese town bird tree, it is only ignorance, and mystery or curiosity, that growing fearful and cold, also drapes events in the darkness of unawareness, such as never to be seen or known or witnessed, or faithfully related as an event, or something that actually happened. Like a closely guarded secret, the method may have involved a handling of human life in details much like animals. Animal man, animal woman, animal law, it meant nothing, as the object in use for the goal identified the living and breathing, midlife Asian female form of Mellu Tanaka, in perfect accuracy. The spaceship came down over the town. The spaceship came down over the town slowly. The spaceship dropped in. The spaceship was not a spaceship. The town was not a town. Up was not down, and then Malu was not there, and there was no truth where she was. No truth, no awareness of real things, real events, real experiences, real sources or real essentials. Mellu didn't like it. Not dark, not normally lit to her eyesight, that she would soon recognize in her room at home. By 1945, Japanese towns were fully electric powered, but it was still mostly new in the small farm villages and industrial areas. For their home, as she reeled, there was one lamp in the main room that was left on, and another in the stairway, so no one would trip and fall. But in her own room it was mostly dark with no light source, like a candle and battery light, what the British called a torch. Her bed was a floor mat, of a fine cotton fabric and invested with her own bodily smells and odors. To sell flowers during the daylight hours was only marginally profitable. If Malu could sell 20 bundles, there was enough money for a bottle of wine. But no more. She noticed that there was something in her right eye. It was a sort of blurry gum, not irritating, but unhealthy. And the spaceship came down over the town in the clouds, and the stars and moon watched it float away, with only a whispering sound like a shoosh. A light ship will do that, Mellu knew that much. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. And the spaceship dropped down, abducted the sleeping woman, and then left the area. It was soundless. Like air. Higher cloud patterns shifted into the recognizable angular style, but no one would ever connect the dots, because the dots were a billion light years apart. There is no truth here, and that is the truth. Something in my eye. There's something in my eye. It was not the Nephilim. These were aliens. The aliens had entirely different goals, in terms of intergalactic transport. The understanding was perhaps at least somewhat more palatable or philanthropic to the betterment of human life. The alien dream was to improve human life and sustain long-term human survival for the entire species. To do this they would kidnap Mellu, and hundreds if not thousands or not millions of others, and make a baby with her. And this was in no way romantic, or pleasant, or loving and kind. The alien shipmate leaned over Mellu's naked body, inspecting the condition of her right eye, with a small sponge. The sponge was wet with an odd fluid, and it made Mellu's eye blurry to her and irritated. The moment was the most terrifying thing that had ever happened to her. She could not move, or cry out, or speak, and was sustained in some sort of paralysis, similar to sleep paralysis, she was aware, but only at a subconscious level, and unable to choose or participate. Not really. Just kidding. April Fool. The flying saucer ran away with the spoon. In the early night, beneath the moon. Beneath the moon. Taken only by violence, violated, as one would acquire a wound or injury, without explanation. It began to seem apparent to Mellu Tanaka that she would need to fall asleep again. And if she fell asleep, then she would wake up. Because anyone who falls asleep wakes up again. And that is the way of life, and the way life is that way, living as an animal life. If the Nephilim were just plain evil, the aliens could be even worse, in their way, because they truly believed in their bizarre motivation as a noble, if not divine undertaking. In other words, zealots. And thus somehow futile. Mellu Tanaka was administered of a biological DNA type, and would have a baby from that sample. Mellu Tanaka was abducted by aliens, and held in this bizarre state, and the DNA sample from another species and another world, and grafted to her own, within the cozy comfort of her healthy womb. This was done in secret. Only a few days before the atomic bomb at Hiroshima would shift Eurasia's status in the galactic realms into an irreversible downward spiral to social oppression, social chaos, food supply depletion, atmosphere depletion, mass suicide warfare, poisoned cities, murdered hostages, social oppression. Poverty was, and then poverty worse and worse than you can possibly imagine. Madness, both alert and institutionalized as warfare. Because, as the popular song of the times refrained, "Your auntie has a new toy." Malu hummed the melody. It was a popular item on a new radio stations her father helped her find on his electronics. Her father was advanced in radios and that sort of equipment, so they could sometimes find music stations on the amplitude modulation, mostly from the Philippines. It was a light sort of jazzy piano tune, with the mocking line, "Your auntie has a new toy. Your auntie. Your aunt. Eurasia." And of course, to make things worse, the typical alien on such a spaceship crew was ugly to look at. Only Malu could describe what she saw, this crewman, doing his duties from what may as well have been an alternate universe, a hell to her and any human being, for the entire journey, as if she were here in this place of obvious discomfort, even forever. And this ugly, disgusting alien man, or whatever he is, this paranoid, this psychoid freak, this ghoulish-colored flesh and bone grotesquerie of beingness, warped by agedness, as the aliens are very, very old, given their long journey across time and space, thinking themselves some sort of gods, called up to perpetuate life in human form, even to their own wishes, vapid in thought, banality and violence. Yet one might argue, for these any man, woman, or child, is less than an insect, less than a horsefly, less than a buzzing bee. But they also valued those as samples of universal beingness. Melu's mind was squashed like a beetle beneath a boot. She panicked. Then she blacked out. Then she woke up again, thinking, "You're out of your messed up mind." Malu, it was boring, only like a hospital setting, and at least some sense of the idea that she was not being put to death, in which the notion of kindness, from her view, was surely a divine light, a warmth, a home-togetherness. It was boring more. Then it was boring longer than that much. Somewhere within her own heart she promised herself never to forget the terror of it, and never to forgive it. There is no record of Melu's restral to terra firma, until many long months following the bombing at the Hiroshima and Nagasaki targets. And in her promise to herself, for many years, Malu promised never to tell anyone what had really happened. Not even the child born from her healthy womb, 9 months following, in New Mexico. Not even the child, when he grew up to manhood. Because children will ask questions, you know. Where did I come from? Where am I going? What is your life? What do I do about problems? And the whole world watched the world war wither and withdraw, windless sargasso of the morons of war. Nagasaki was the kappa. The world learned of the event, in the usual way, such as the armistice, but more deeply, as a threshold moment for humanity in general. If mankind was all but children, from its early start-up eras eating from the fields at Hiroshima, at Nagasaki, any remaining innocence seemed lost forever. But this was not true, yet seemed so. The appeal of the power of the nuclear weapon device soon expanded into massive worldwide arsenals of even more powerful nuclear weapons, within only 20 or 30 years. So many of these weapons, in fact within another 20 years, that most educated people found the very idea frightening, and a cloud of ugly ideas settled into the minds of all. It was called the Cold War, or mutually assured destruction. It lasted maybe 40 years. Was Richard Nixon an alien from outer space? No, of course not. How do we arrive at far distant places except in the imagination? It depends how far away you ran from me to get there, and how fast. If we arrive, and the place does not exist, will we die? There is no death. There is no birth. You know this, Mellu. A light ship makes a whooshing sound. Malu smiled. It was the sort of thing she and her husband, Philip Corso, would discuss at the dinner table. If she didn't panic, it arrived in her heart, somehow, that it was all meant to be, and this gave her peace. But that was many years from now, and I'm not finished remembering you, right now, she said. Philip smiled back. Early in the year 1946, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The baby was fine, healthy and chubby and perfectly safe. There are no light ships, Philip. They don't exist.